Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the internet, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here at my 50,000 square foot Hollywood, California production studio. Actually, I'm in Burbank, California, and this is a spare room that I turned into a studio, but I'm super glad that you guys are here anyways. We talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, and all types of good things like that. Listen, we got a whole hell of a lot of stuff to talk about today. Obviously, we got to talk about the Star Trek situation, losing Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth, and a lot of other stuff to go as well. But first, let's do a little bit of house cleaning. Now, every day on the John Campea Show here, or at least most days, we have a question of the day. Now, last Friday, the question of the day revolved around an issue that came up about the new trend in movie theaters for doing self-serve concessions. You know, where you take your popcorn and you go butter it yourself and you get a big empty cup and you go fill it yourself at one of those Coke machines. I love it. Like, I love that thing, but some people don't like it. They want the crew to do it, and I talked about the reasons why I like it. And the question of the day was, do you guys like the trend of doing self-serve when it comes to the concessions? And I was shocked. Actually, most of you guys agreed with me this time. Well, wonders never cease. 64.4% of you said, yes, you do like this new trend of being able to serve yourself. And 35.5% of you understandably said, no, we do not like this new trend of doing stuff like this. We'd rather have the machines ourselves. So, or we'd rather have the concession people do that for us. So there you have it, go. Guys, we will have a new question of the day today a little bit later on. And hey, I should just mention this just now. I just got a notification from Disney that today, production on the live action Mulan film, because a lot of people wondering, we've been talking about Mulan forever. When's this thing going to happen? Just literally as we were talking about the question of the day, notification popped up here that production began today on the new Mulan, live action Mulan film. So some people were starting to wonder if this thing was even going to happen. Apparently it is happening and everything is off and running. All right. Let's go on to one of these things we want to talk about off the top. You guys remember this weekend, the new film, The Meg, opened up. And a lot of people were not sure, including the industry people. They were projecting The Meg to make just north of $20 million opening weekend, which was not great. Well, it blew by those expectations. According to reports, The Meg made $44.5 million on its opening weekend, nearly double of what the initial projections were. Now, double just means an extra 20 million. That's all that much. But it did make nearly double of what their projections were, easily taking the #1 spot at the box office. And speaking of that, then let's take a look at the top 5 at the box office this weekend. Coming in at #1, obviously The Meg with $44.5 million. In its third weekend, Mission Impossible drops down to second place, making another $20 million. It's doing great. Disney's Christopher Robin comes in third with $12.3 million. Opening this weekend along with The Meg was Slender Man, making $11.3, which exceeded expectations. And also exceeding expectations was Black Klansman, which made $10.7 million. So a bunch of films opening this weekend, all making more than they were projected to make, all doing pretty well. Now, even more importantly for The Meg, is that The Meg not only made $44.5 million domestically, worldwide it made over $140 million. Now, I said before that I think The Meg needs to make around $350 million to break even. Some industry reports are saying it needs to make closer to 315, whatever. By opening up with $140 million worldwide and $44.5 million at the domestic box office, I think I was wrong about The Meg. I said I don't see The Meg breaking even. I've been saying that. I just don't see The Meg breaking even at the box office. But I think after looking at this weekend's results, I think you got to assume at this point that it probably will. I don't think it'll make a ton of money because I don't think the movie's good enough to get a lot of word of mouth and getting people coming back for multiple viewings, at least not a lot of people. But I think I was wrong. I said this movie wouldn't break even. It was going to be a loss for the studio. But at this opening, you got to start to think that, you know what? I think maybe it will do okay and that it will make enough money to exceed those expectations and all that kind of stuff. So that's where they are right now. Now, also off the top, what we should talk about here is, this is another interesting little thing that just sort of came up in the world of movie news. It was being reported this morning that Antoine Fuqua, the director of such films as The Magnificent Seven, Equalizer, Equalizer 2, Training Day, which won Denzel Washington Academy Award, apparently Antoine Fuqua is having some discussions with Marvel to potentially direct a Marvel picture. Now, in an interview, Antoine Fuqua revealed that Sony's movie Morbius, that's going to star Jared Leto as the title character Morbius. Apparently, they offered that film to Antoine Fuqua. He turned it down, went to do something else. Now he's saying he does have meetings planned with Kevin Feige to talk about what they have going on. Now, Antoine Fuqua made an interesting comment when discussing this. He said, you know, these superhero universe movies, they have, he's asking, he goes, what does a director do? He said, it seems like you got a machine in place and they make great movies, but you got a machine in place and it seems like a lot of decisions are made by other people. And his biggest concern was, what do I as a director? Do I get to tell this story in a comic book movie, or does somebody else tell stories and I'm just there kind of to manage the production? And that was his main concern. Now, when you look at the freedom that guys like Taika Waititi had on Thor Ragnarok, obviously they had some boundaries they had to stay within. Or you look at the freedom that a Ryan Coogler had with making a Black Panther. Obviously, some boundaries he had to stay within, but they had a lot of creative freedom. And when you watch Black Panther and when you watch Thor Ragnarok, you can clearly see the Taika Waititi thumbprint all over Ragnarok. And you can clearly see the Ryan Coogler thumbprint all over Black Panther. So it's not like they were just cookie cutter movies. So I got a feeling that when Antoine Fuqua, who I think is a terrific director, when he meets with Kevin Feige, that's going to probably be the number one thing on his mind, is like, how much freedom do I have to tell the story? And if he can be given something like what a Taika Waititi or a Kenneth Branagh did on the original Thor, or a Ryan Coogler on Black Panther, or what the Russo brothers were kind of handed for like Infinity War, then that could be enough to appeal to him and convince him to hop on board and maybe try his hand at a comic book film. I think he would be terrific. Look, this dude knows how to tell a good story. He knows how to tell an exciting story. He knows how to develop decent characters. So I think it would be a really nice fit for him to do either a Marvel or like a DC film or some other kind of comic book movie. I think it'd be pretty exciting and I think could work pretty well. So here's hoping these discussions with Kevin Feige goes pretty well. All right. With that stuff out of the way, let's get on to our main topics. How do we select our main topics around here? It's simple. You guys select them by emailing them in to me. How do you submit a topic or a question to be on the John Campea Show? It's really simple. You just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put the word topic in the subject line. Once again, email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put the word topic in the subject line. And as always, guys, keep your emails to 90 words or less, or else I just can't use them and use them on, and maybe you'll see your question or topic pop up on the John Campea Show. All right, let's get rolling with topic number one. And the first emailed in topic today comes to us from Barton Hall, who writes, the drama with Moviepass continues to spin on like a bad soap opera. In the New York Times, I was reading that not only are you limited to 3 movies a month now, but that each day you will only have 2 movies to choose from. Yeah, if there are 9 movies playing at your theater, Moviepass will only let you pick between 2 and none of the others. Why would anyone want this? All right, thanks a lot for the question, Barton. And Moviepass clearly has been in a bit of a free fall. The last I checked, their stock price was now at 4 cents. But give the devil his due. I think some of the moves that Moviepass was trying to make last week were actually kind of smart ones. I think the limiting to 3 movies a month was wise. I think that was a very wise decision. And let's face it, their own data showed that the vast majority of Moviepass users don't go to see more than 3 movies a month anyway. The vast majority don't go to see more than 3. So by limiting it to 3, at $10 a month, that's still a great deal. So wait a minute. So I go see 3 movies, that's me spending $37. Or I could just spend $10. I'm saving $27. That's a great deal. So personally, I like that move. I thought that was pretty smart. They rescinded the $15 a month thing back to $10 a month. Unfortunately, then on Friday, they had another blackout. Their service went offline again, which is unfortunate. And the New York, I believe it was the New York Post, not the New York Times, came out and reported that now they have a thing where you're only going to have 2 movies that you can pick from. Let me read this. It's at length, but let me read this from the New York Post report because I think it lays it out a little bit better than I could. At the AMC Empire 25 in Times Square, for example, the 2 showtimes available for the 147-minute Mission Impossible Fallout were 2:30 p.m. and 10:45 p.m. A moviegoer attending that showtime would exit the theater at roughly 1:45 in the morning. Meanwhile, Slender Man, because in this story, they're reporting that the only two options that a Moviepass customer had was to either see Slender Man or Mission Impossible Fallout. Anyway, go on. Meanwhile, Slender Man, a horror movie centered around a viral internet hoax, currently has a 16% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. In an interview with the Post on Friday, CEO Mitch Lowe confirmed the new policy about 2 films a day that you'll have to choose from, noting that the 2 movies on offer might change each day. Unfortunately, in order to stay financially stable, we've had to curtail the service, Lowe said. We had to right the ship as far as the amount of money we were burning. The new move was designed to help the company limp along until September, when all of its monthly users will have been moved to the new monthly plan that limits this to 3 movies a month, Lowe said. So, Moviepass, in order to try to save some money, instead of letting you see any movie you want at the movie theater, is now just giving you an option of 2 films, and what those 2 films are could change today, and could change tomorrow, and could change the day after that. The reason this is incredibly inconvenient for Moviepass subscribers especially is that you can't jump online and buy your tickets in advance. Like, you have to be at the theater to order your thing. So basically, it's hard to plan out your days. Like, it's hard to say, I'm going to go see this movie tomorrow, when tomorrow the 2 movies they're offering could be different movies than the ones they're offering today. So you can't even plan on how you're going to use your Moviepass. Now, keep this in mind, though. It does sound like this move of limiting your choices of movies to 2 movies a day, it could be a temporary thing. Like, let's look at that last paragraph one more time, because it sounds like this might be temporary. The new move was designed to help the company limp along until mid-September, when all of its monthly users will have been moved to a new plan that limits them to 3 movies a month, Lowe said. So, within that, it is possible that this limitation of you only got 2 movies to choose from, that might only be until next month, once they roll everybody else over into the new plan that limits you to 3 movies a month. It sounds like maybe at that point, you'll be offered all the movies again. I hope it is, because honestly, at just 2 movies a day, or 2 movies choices to choose from per day, and a limitation of 3 movies per month, and if they don't rescind the policy of you can't see new release movies, we're getting to a point where I'm not seeing what the point is of having a Moviepass card. If they can open up your options, have the 3 movie limit per month at $10 a month, that's still not a bad deal if you don't live near an AMC to have an AMC A-list. Or for whatever reason Cinemia doesn't work for you, Moviepass still then becomes a viable alternative. We'll have to wait and see how that whole thing all plays out, though. All right, let's move on to the second topic. And the second topic today comes to us from Brenda Peace, who writes, "Hey, John. Everyone seems to be talking about Idris Elba as the new James Bond as if it's almost a certainty. I'm one of those people that love the idea of him as Bond. He carries himself with such class and distinction, and he's a badass all at the same time. Perfect for Bond. So, are we actually close to getting him as our new 007? All right, thanks a lot for the question, Brenda. And yes, there has been a lot of talk ever since 2014 about the possibility of this man here, Idris Elba, who's awesome, becoming a new James Bond. Now, these whispers and talks intensified recently when Antoine Fuqua, the director we were just talking about a little while ago, there was a report saying that Antoine Fuqua said that he was talking with the James Bond producers, and that the James Bond producers were saying they're totally open to having like an Idris Elba, and they're totally open to having a black James Bond. So that quote coming out got everybody furiously talking about the whole Idris Elba thing. And a lot of people thinking that actually it's not just possible, it sounds like it's a done deal. It sounds like Idris Elba is going to be our new James Bond. Well, back up. Because the reps for Antoine Fuqua now are saying that Antoine Fuqua never said that. That quote about him talking to the Bond producers, he said somebody made up. What the Antoine Fuqua's PR rep said was the following. He never had a conversation with Barbara. That's the main producer behind the James Bond franchise. He never had a conversation with Barbara about the franchise or about any casting. It's all made up stuff. Not sure how it got started. Now, seemingly to put a cherry on that whole thing, Idris Elba then got on social media and said, "My name's Elba, Idris Elba," and then immediately put out don't believe the hype. So it's starting to look like, when you look at Antoine Fuqua's representative saying, look, that conversation that got everybody talking never happened. And now Idris Elba putting out like a little social media thing saying, don't believe the hype. It probably looks like this is not happening. It looks like there is not going to be an Idris Elba James Bond. Now, that's not to say we're still a long ways off. We still got another Daniel Craig James Bond movie coming. So we're a long ways off. So it could transpire, sure. But as of right now, no, Idris Elba is not our new James Bond. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Brenda. Now, from a personal point of view, I think Idris Elba would be a terrific James Bond. I really do. I think you're right. He carries himself with that class, with that dignity, but he's also a real badass at the same time. That was something that Daniel Craig has been able to do, and why Daniel Craig, quite frankly, is now my all-time favorite Bond, because Idris Elba carries the same quality that Idris Elba does, and that was that Idris Elba was the perfect blending of the two prototype Bonds, the suave Roger Moore Bond and the badass Sean Connery Bond. Daniel Craig was both of them. You know, subsequent Bonds were kind of either more like Moore or more like Sean Connery. Daniel Craig was both. And I think Idris Elba carries those same qualities. I also think Idris Elba could easily carry that suaveness of a Roger Moore and that badassness of a Sean Connery. I think he could do both. So I would love it if you were new James Bond. Now, there are other actors I would love as a new James Bond. Henry Cavill, Tom Hiddleston, Chiwetel Ejiofor, whatever. Many other actors I could see as James Bond. But were they to name Idris Elba as James Bond, I'd be totally up for it. Unfortunately, as of right now, that doesn't sound like it's what's happening. So let's keep our eyes on the situation. All right, let's move on now to topic number 3. And topic number 3 comes to us from Colin Carpenter, who writes, "What's up, John? Looks like Marvel is going to be holding a film festival type of event to celebrate their 10th anniversary by showing all 20 Marvel films on IMAX. I can't find a lot of details on things like dates and what IMAX locations they'll be playing at. I'm so up for this. Do you know anything about it?" Yeah, so this was great. We all know that Marvel is in its 10th anniversary of the MCU and stuff like that. So this announcement came out that I think is amazing, especially if you're one of these people who hasn't had a chance to see all the Marvel films on the big screen. You're going to get that chance again. Marvel has teamed up with IMAX, and in IMAX locations across the country, from what I understand, this is going to be playing in a lot of places. Now, they haven't given a full list of details of all the locations that I'm aware of, but they have given dates and they've given an outline. And if you've got an IMAX theater near you, you'll probably be able to participate in this festival. Now, the festival will run from August 30th to September 6th. So here's how it's going to look. For August, from the 30th all the way to Monday, September the 3rd, is when they're going to show all the MCU movies. 4 movies a day, starting, and they're going to be in chronological order. So they're starting with Iron Man, or at least in the order in which they were released. They're starting with Iron Man and ending with Ant-Man and the Wasp on Monday, September the 3rd. Now then, on Tuesday, September the 4th, they're having an Origins special where they're going to replay the original Iron Man, Spider-Man Homecoming, Black Panther, and Doctor Strange. And then on Wednesday the 5th, they're doing special team-up movies. So they're going to replay Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I'm not sure why they're doing Volume 2 instead of number 1. The first one was the better one. Anyway, Civil War, Avengers, and Avengers Infinity War. And then on September 6th, they will play 2 movies again, and those are going to be audience choice. So they're probably at some point going to have a poll online where people can go and vote for the 2 movies they want to see play on the 6th. I'm guessing, I'm speculating. I don't know if that's the case or how they're playing that out. So as far as the wares, it's going to be in IMAX locations. It sounds like it's going to be nationwide. I'm sure not on every single IMAX screen, but I'm sure they're going to release a list pretty soon of all the locations, but it sounds like you're going to probably have one playing near you. The dates are going to be September 30th, so starting late next month, all the way to September 6th, or August 30th, all the way to September 6th. They're going to start by playing the first 20, then play some origin films, then play some team-up films, then do viewer's choice, picking 2 more to end it off. I think that sounds like a hell of a lot of fun. And I'm telling you right now, I'm probably going to be at the theater for this. Not the whole thing. No chance in hell I'm doing the whole thing. But I'm going to be buying some tickets to this because who knows when you'll get another chance to see these films on the big screen, particularly on an IMAX screen. And by the way, I believe they said in the reports, this is going to include 3 movies that never showed on IMAX before. And I can't remember which ones they were. I think The Hulk is one of them. I can't remember. But anyway, it's going to show a couple of them that have never been on the big screen before or on the IMAX screen before. That to me sounds very exciting. So put that on your radar, guys, because I think this sounds like a lot of fun. I'm probably going to be participating in it myself. All right, let's move on to topic number 4. And the 4th topic today comes to us from Patrick Taylor, who writes, I'm totally with you on your love for the new Star Trek movies under J.J. Abrams' direction. I've been looking forward to Star Trek 4 with Chris Hemsworth returning as Kirk's dad, but now it's all gone to crap. The news is that both Chris Hemsworth and Chris Pine have backed out of Star Trek 4 and will not appear in it. At this point, is the franchise dead? All right, so for those of you who maybe didn't know about this, the plans for the next Star Trek film was going to involve Chris Hemsworth, who, if you remember, in the 2009 Star Trek film, was in the first 10 minutes of the movie as James Kirk's dad. He was, what was his first name? I can't remember whatever his name. George Kirk. That's right, George. So he was in the first 10 minutes of the movie, and the first 10 minutes was about him getting his wife and his newborn baby off the Enterprise, or off the starship they were on before it got destroyed, and he saved everybody. The talk has been for a couple of years now that they had an idea for a Star Trek 4 that would involve time travel and would star Chris Pine, obviously as Captain James T. Kirk, and Chris Hemsworth as George Kirk coming back, and you're going to see them on screen together. I have loved this idea because unlike some other Star Trek loving fans I know, I have really enjoyed the new Star Trek movies. I really have. I've liked all 3 of them. I thought, especially this last one, Star Trek Beyond, I think it was called. I loved it. I thought it was the best of the bunch. It also made the least amount of money out of all of them, but I thought it was the best one yet. So that's what everything's kind of revolved around. Then this report came out on Friday that both Christopher Pine and Christopher Hemsworth have walked away and they are not going to be in this thing. The report says that both Paramount and Pine and Hemsworth reps both walked away from the table. And it all seems to be revolving around, obviously, money. Chris Hemsworth wants a better deal than he's being offered. With Chris Pine, here's the thing. If I understand the reports right, Chris Pine does have a contract to do number 4. However, the contract offers him a certain amount of money. Paramount, understanding that the Star Trek films don't make as much money as Marvel or DC films, understanding that the last Star Trek film only made about $350 million worldwide, if that, Paramount wants to pay him a little bit less because these movies aren't making that much money. You know, Paramount doesn't want to pay him huge blockbuster actor money when the movie's not going to be a huge blockbuster. I get that. I understand that. But Chris Pine is saying, time out, kids. We have a contract. It says if I do a 4th Star Trek film, you are going to pay me this amount of money. That's the contract. I will not accept taking a pay cut. And Paramount says, but these movies make it so we can't afford to pay you at that level. We thought they would when we signed you to the contract. We still want to make the movie, but we still want you in it, but we don't want it up, your pay up here. We'd like to put it here just to make sure we can break even and make a little bit of money on this. That's understandable. That's completely understandable for Paramount to ask. But it's also completely understandable that Chris Pine would go, we had a deal. You said you pay me this much if I do number 4. That's how much I want. Paramount, and so that's understandable. But Paramount's saying, but we can't afford to pay you that much. We're going to lose money, which is totally understandable. This is a situation that just sucks. Because honestly, as a fan, normally in situations like this, what you and I and all of us love to do is point to who's at fault, right? That's what we like to do. Honestly, I don't blame anybody here. I do not blame Chris Pine if he's saying, look, we signed a deal. and the deal said, if I do 4, you're going to pay me this much. That's the deal. I want you to honor the deal. There is nothing wrong with Chris Pine sticking to his guns on that and insisting to get what they agreed to. At the same time, Paramount they're not in the business to lose money. They're like, look, these Star Trek movies don't make that much. We can't afford to pay you this much. And we're not going to be financially irresponsible by just throwing money around that we know we can't get back. So we need you to take a pay cut. I completely understand where they're coming from. I really do. I 100% understand their position. Unfortunately, since we can totally see where Chris Pine is coming from, and we can totally see where Paramount is coming from, it leaves us in a position of, we're screwed then. We're screwed. One of these guys has to blink or else it's not happening. So that brings up the question. If these guys have both walked and the whole story was supposed to be about these guys, it was supposed to be Captain James T. Kirk and his dad, and now Captain James T. Kirk and his dad have both walked, where does that leave this Star Trek film? Where does it leave us at the moment? Like, I honestly, it's really tough to try to wrap your head around this when you've got both of these guys walking away from the table and Paramount saying, well, I mean, we just can't do anything here. They had an agreement. The agreement apparently no longer works. And now they got to try to renegotiate, and neither side seems to want to budge. Now, it is important to point out here, too, that the articles that are going around are stressing that the two sides could come back to the table. They could come back to the table. And I mean, just because they've walked, that doesn't mean, you know, it's all done, period. They could start talking again. Here's what I hope happens. If I were a mediator here, what I might do is say to Paramount and Chris Pine, hey guys, how about this? Pine, you want this much. Paramount, you want to pay him this much. How about we do this? Why don't you pay Chris Pine this much, split the difference a little, and re-sign Chris, give Chris another contract that promises the next Star Trek film you will be paid at this level. If we make another Star Trek film, we guarantee you will be Captain Kirk, and we guarantee you will be paid at this level. That guarantees Chris Pine another big payday down the line, and it gets this movie made. And if this movie doesn't make any money, then Paramount just doesn't make Star Trek V, and therefore nobody's out any more money. That's the only way I see this happening at this point. But it brings us to our question of the day. And today's question of the day for you guys is this. Can they make Star Trek IV without Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth? Do you think, even if they don't get Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth back to the table, that Star Trek IV will get made anyway? Now, here's how you answer that. Look in the description of this video. Down at the bottom of the description is a link to the question of the day. Click that link and cast your vote. Can Star Trek IV still happen without Pine and Hemsworth? Maybe they just don't have the two characters and they work around it. Maybe they just recast the characters. I mean, we've had Chris Pine as Kirk for all 3 films, but maybe we can recast. Will it happen? So let me go over right now to the poll results, because I just announced it. We'll see if a bunch of you guys have voted already. And it looks like a bunch of you guys have voted already. Over 200 of you have already cast your vote, even though I just announced it. And it's close. Right now, 52.4% of you are saying, no, Star Trek IV cannot happen without Chris Hemsworth and Chris Pine. And 47.5% of you are saying, yes, it still can happen, even if it has to be without Chris Hemsworth and Chris Pine. You still got 24 hours to vote on this, guys. Once again, look in the description of this video. Down at the bottom of the description, you'll find the link. Go cast your vote, and we will give you the results of today's question of the day. It is razor close right now between those of you who are saying, yes, he will, or yes, it will happen, and no, it won't happen. Go cast your vote, and I'll give you the full results tomorrow. All right, let's move on now to the final email of the day. And the final email today comes to us from one of our Patreon supporters, David Chance. First of all, thank you for being a Patreon supporter, David. How come superhero shows are addicted to the villain of the season trope? We get a season full of filler episodes, many of which feature our hero or heroes getting humiliated by the villain. One of the great things about the Star Trek series is that they were full of many superb single story episodes. All right, thanks a lot for the question, David. And yeah, in a lot of the comic book shows these days, particularly like Arrow and Flash and others, there is, like with Flash, oh, this season my villain is the Reverse Flash. This season my villain is Avatar. This season my villain is Zoom. This season my villain is, whatever the Thinker dude's name was. I can't even remember. DeVoe, which was terrible, by the way. Arrow, this season my villain is this guy. This season my... So, yeah, there is that. I think the reason they do that, I'll be honest with you, I don't mind that formula. I honestly don't mind that formula because to me, that formula gives us the best of both worlds. Number one, it gives the season a feel of being a chapter in the story, right? It gives an entire season the feeling of being a chapter. I like individual seasons having their own individual storylines. And the best way to enact that individual storyline, there are others as well, but one of the best and easiest ways to enact a throughout storyline for a season is by having your main villain for that season. That gives you a sense of a chapter in the story. But what we have also seen in these shows that are like 20 plus episodes long during a season is that still gives them room to have a couple of episodes each season that are kind of one-off stories. That's step away. You know who does it all the time? Supernatural. Supernatural does this all the time. Like, let's say the big arc of this season is they're trying to find the Hell Tablets. Okay, the boys are trying to find the Hell Tablets. That's the story of the season. But what they would still do throughout the season is once in a while the boys go, well, look, we've been going at this for a couple of days. We haven't gotten any new leads. Let's go work a job. And they take a side episode out to go to, Buxom, Idaho somewhere to research a nest of vampires that are there. And they have a single shot episode. And then they'll have 4 or 5 of those single shot episodes throughout the season while also having one ongoing long story. And, well, I guess, by the way, Supernatural is also a CW show, much like all these ones. And I like that formula. I do. I think that gives us the best of both worlds of this and that. Because here's the thing. You can't do a season of Villain of the Week. Number one, you get no overall story arc. And to really stay connected to these shows, I think you need overall story arc. Especially these superhero shows. But the other problem is, at 20 plus episodes, you are going to burn through your villains so fast. So fast. Hey, we got Grim Man as this one. Oh, good, I love Grim Man. Well, Grim Man got beat in one episode, and there goes Grim Man. Ah. Oh, look, they got Hell Baby. Oh, great, I love the Hell Baby villain. Oh, but he's only going to be in next week because then he's going to get beaten that week, and then we're never going to see Hell Baby again. So by having these overall story arc lines, you can do those individual villains, and you can have your villain of the season and have overall story arcs that play out like a chapter in a story and have individual one-off stories. I kind of like it myself, to be honest. I could see why maybe it frustrates some on one way. Like, I've heard from a lot of people that don't even like the one-off stories. I've heard from a lot of people that said a season should just be about one villain and have no side episodes. Every episode should be in that story. And then there are some people like, no, we want more one-shot episodes peppered in there. And then there's some like you were saying, why do we even need a villain of the month or a villain of the season? Let's just do all one-shot shows. So it really depends on the individual show. It all depends on the flow of the show and what works and what doesn't. But you do have to be careful because you burn through your villains pretty damn fast, I think. All right, guys, that'll do it for all of the emailed in questions of the day. Don't forget, email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com and put the word topic in the subject line, and maybe you can see your question on a future episode. Okay, with that out of the way, guys, we've got a little bit of time left, so we're going to go over to the live chat board and take some of your live questions right now. And the first live question today comes to us from Cameron Peterson, who writes, Regal is taking forever with their subscription plan. Oh, no, they're not. No. Look, understand this. AMC Theaters didn't just one week say, we should have a subscription plan, and then the next week launch their subscription plan. AMC Theaters has been researching a monthly subscription plan long before Moviepass, ever since I was working at AMC. I remember years ago, like every once in a while, I would fly out to Kansas. That's where AMC head offices were. And I remember this one trip out there years ago and talking to a bunch of the execs at AMC and talking about how they were studying the Cineworld model going on in the UK and researching about how they could implement what would work best for them. And they were doing research and all that kind of stuff. And they took years to implement their thing. Years. A bunch of people seem to think, oh, the AMC A-list was in response to Moviepass. And I try to tell people it wasn't. They were researching this years ago. And the movie theater industry is very crawl, walk, run. They move very deliberately and very slowly, which was sometimes very frustrating for me. But they were researching it for years. Regal right now is owned by Cineworld. Cineworld was the founders of this whole monthly movie subscription idea. They will get it, but they will get it when they are ready to launch it. It took AMC years to do it. I expect that we're going to see one from Regal and probably pretty soon. But yeah, never feel like it's taking them forever. It's like, no, it's not. It's really not. I know we want instant gratification right now kind of feel, but just be a little bit patient. It's not taking them forever. They'll have one. It's coming, I'm sure. Let's just give them a breath to make sure that, because, you know, these businesses want to do it right. Because you do these things wrong and you lose billions of dollars and you go out of business. So they're going to make sure they do it right. So let's give them a little bit of leeway. All right, David Bet Sharhad writes, hello, John. Hello, David. Do you think Tom Holland's Spider-Man can exist in both Sony and Marvel Cinematic Universes at the same time? From everyone talking, I have an impression that he can only be in one. That is the question of the day that we've been asking for years now. Ever since they announced the Sony and Marvel deal. And I still remember where I was when we found out about the deal. Me and Dennis Zen were in Atlanta. Actually, there was a whole bunch of us there in Atlanta from the AMC Movie News crew. And we were in Atlanta. And we were coming back to our hotel. And we just got in the lobby of the hotel in Atlanta when we checked our phones and got the notification Sony and Marvel make their deal to bring Spider-Man into the MCU. He's still going to be under Sony's control, but he was going to be allowed to be in the MCU. And I still remember the exact spot I was standing when I read this. Me and Dennis just kind of looked at each other and went, holy shit! And it's like, what? Right? But ever since then, the question has been, would he be able to exist in Sony, in a Sony universe and in the MCU? And I remember Kevin Feige and the producer from Sony, they were even asked directly, and they gave these really weird, contradictory and vague responses. Like, they exist in the same universe without being in the same worlds. And like Kevin Feige's like, yes, that's the exact right answer. And then everybody's like, what? And everybody's left, what the hell are you talking about? They've never really been clear on that. Therefore, we have always assumed, probably rightfully, that as long as this deal's in place, we probably will not see Tom Holland as Spider-Man in the Sony movies. That's our assumption right now. That's what it looks like everything's pointing towards. So, but hey, it's Sony and Marvel. If they get together and say, yeah, okay, yeah, let's let Tom Holland. But to do that is to say that the Sonyverse and the MCU are indeed the same cinematic universe. And that's something that both sides, I think, are very hesitant to do. So I think as a fan, our best assumption right now is just to assume that they cannot be in the same film, or they cannot be in both at the same time. I think that's our assumption right now until we hear otherwise. All right, Ben Hayusa writes, thoughts on Let's Be Cops? Rewatched it again, and in my opinion, it's an underrated comedy. It was really odd when it came out because Ann and I were really into watching New Girl at the time, and you had 2 stars from New Girl in it. And I thought the trailer was funny. I'll be honest, the movie wasn't awful. It was not awful. But it also, to me, did not live up to the trailer. For me personally, it did not live up to the trailer. It was not as good as it had the potential of being, at least to me at any rate. Had some good laughs. Jake Johnson, I love Jake. He's, by the way, speaking of Spider-Man, Jake from There Will Be Cops, he is doing the voice of Peter Parker's Spider-Man in the new Sony animated film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So there's a little connection there. So I love Jake. I think he's really funny and engaging. And the movie has its moments. It absolutely had its moments. I laughed a number of times in the film, just not as often as I would like. So I didn't think it was awful. But I got to admit, I didn't think it was all that great, Ben. That's just me. But all films subjective. Clearly it worked for you, and I'm glad that it did. Ben follows that up with, to that question that asked you what horror movie scared you the most. The horror movie that used to scare me the most as a kid is Pet Sematary. Hey, look, if you were young, like we were, when Pet Sematary came out, it scared the bejesus out of us. That's a scary movie. But yeah, so what Ben is referring to is the other day on the show, somebody asked me what was the movie that has scared me the most. Unquestionably, it's American Werewolf in London. No movie has ever scared me as much as an American Werewolf in London. And to this day, as a grown-ass man, I cannot watch that movie at night in the dark. I just can't do it. It scared the hell out of me. So, but Pet Sematary ranks right up there too. And by the way, they've already started shooting the Pet Sematary remake. They've already started shooting it, so we should be getting that pretty soon. Keep your eyes open for that. All right. Matt Guillemette writes, do you think the new Jack Ryan will be any good and are looking forward to it? Continue to speak your mind, John. Well, the new Jack Ryan is talking about is the new Amazon series that's going to star Jim Halpert, John Krasinski, who is, of course, wrote, directed, produced, and starred in A Quiet Place, which was like the surprise hit film of the year. In my opinion, still the best movie of the year. In my opinion, A Quiet Place, still the best movie of the year. Damn, that movie's so good. But anyway, John Krasinski now is in front of the camera as Jack Ryan, the famous, movie character played by Alec Baldwin and Harrison Ford and Ben Affleck at one point, in the new Amazon series. I am very much looking forward to it. The trailer sold me. I mean, I was already on board because I like Jack Ryan stories and I like John Krasinski a lot. So I was already kind of on board with it. But then I saw the trailer and I thought the trailer was just aces. I thought the trailer gave me little hints of everything I wanted in a show like that. So that doesn't mean it's going to be good. I mean, it could be horrible. It could be a total train wreck. But I got to say, I am looking forward to it. And so far, what I've seen looks pretty good. So I'm going to keep my anticipation level up. All right, Ben follows up with, also in the world of wrestling, yeah, I heard about this. Jim the Anvil Neidhart has passed away. Condolences to Bret Hart. Growing up, when I was a kid, I watched wrestling. And my absolute favorite wrestlers and tag team, and my all-time favorite tag team, was the Hart Foundation, with Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and Jimmy Mouth of the South Hart as their manager. The Hart Foundation were my all-time favorites. There has never been a tag team anywhere near as good. They were awesome. I love them dearly. And then Jim the Anvil Neidhart's daughter is now a professional wrestler, and she was actually the women's champion in the WWE for a while. But it's really sad because I just looked at this family picture with Bret Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Owen Hart, Brian Pillman, and Davey Boy Smith. And they were all by marriage or by blood related. And they're all dead now except for Bret Hart. Bret Hart's the last one. And it was very sad looking at that picture today. So yeah, absolutely. Thoughts and condolences going out to the family, to the Hart family, and to the family of Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Rami J. Royster writes, we're all animals. Some have bigger teeth. Ah, yeah, the Ben Kingsley quote. We're all animals. Best quote in that trailer. There's this new movie coming out, Operation Finale, with Poe Dameron, Oscar Isaac, and Ben Kingsley. And there's this amazing line in the trailer where he says, we're all animals. Some of us have bigger teeth than others. Just some have bigger teeth than others. It's a great line. I'm very much looking forward to watching that movie. That looks great to me. I cannot wait to see it. Thanks for bringing that one up, Rami. Trojan of Narnia writes, is Toby Flenderson in charge of the AMC HR department? I do not recognize the name. I haven't been at AMC for a number of years. I can simply tell you that the person who was in charge of the HR department at the time was not Toby Flenderson, to the best of my knowledge. It was not, so I can't answer that question. ZCMZ Zombie Custom Maps writes, thoughts on Indian in the Cupboard? Never was a big fan of it, to be honest with you. Never was a huge fan. I remember, too, they kind of marketed it. And when you watch it, you kind of have this feel, this was going to be the next big classic. You know what I mean? And it just never hit that note for me. Now, I know a couple of people that remember it and think of it very fondly, but for me, it was never that much. ZCM follows up with, maybe the only way Pine and Hemsworth get back into Star Trek is if Tarantino directs the next movie. Maybe after 4. It'll have nothing to do with it. Tarantino will have nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with anything. Those are 2 separate projects, the Star Trek 4 project and the Tarantino project that, by the way, has not been greenlit yet. The Tarantino proposed project are 2 totally separate films that would not be connected. Now, recently, Zachary Quinto, who played Sylar in Heroes Season 1, and of course plays Mr. Spock in the new movies, he kind of made it sound like maybe that Tarantino's movie could involve the current cast. Everything else I've heard has always suggested that it would be a totally separate movie. But who knows? It's all up in the air. But honestly, it doesn't. These negotiation stuff will have nothing to do with whether Tarantino does or does not is involved. It's about money. It's strictly about money, and it's unfortunately it's going to have to be solved with a solution that involves money one way or the other, right? So we're just going to have to wait and see how that all turns out. James Welsh writes, "Who decides what becomes a show or a movie at Marvel?" Well, I mean, it really all depends. I mean, you've got Kevin Feige is in charge of the movie world. So you got him, and he'll decide what movies he wants to make. Then you've got a television division that Kevin Feige is not involved in, and they try to decide what they want to make. If there's ever any conflict, then their boss, Alan Horn, will make that decision. So really, ultimately, it would ultimately, if there was some kind of conflict, like, hey, we want to make a... I don't know, we want to make an Inhumans movie. No, we want to make an Inhumans TV show. Well, then it goes to Alan Horn. And Alan Horn will make the call. Because Alan Horn is the chairman of Disney Studios, the movie divisions. Bob Iger, who is in charge of all of Disney, is Alan Horn's boss. But yeah, that decision would probably come down to Alan Horn. Let's see here. Dakota Barber writes, where do we go? Planning on seeing Black Klansman today. Since I didn't get over the weekend, we'll report back on open mic with my thoughts. Yeah, Ann and I wanted to go see it this weekend, but it was a very busy weekend. We're probably going to sneak out tomorrow. We're not going to go see it tonight because Ann she has an art class tonight. It's her final art class. My wife Ann is a great little artist. She's great. She's a great little artist. So she started taking, about 2 months ago, she started taking these weekly art classes as well, just to touch up. And she's done some great stuff. I'm really very proud of her. I'm always proud of her, but there's that too. So we are probably going to try to sneak out to see it tomorrow night. It's now playing up the street, so we're going to go see this. So yeah, let me know on open mic what you thought of it, Dakota. Julius Goodwin writes, why is Sony calling movies SUMC instead of SCU? First of all, I've never heard either of those terms. And secondly, I would ask, what does it matter? Who cares? I've never heard Sony call it SUMC. I'm not saying they haven't. I'm just saying I haven't heard that yet. I haven't seen it. Or SCU. I guess you couldn't just call it Sony Cinematic Universe because that could be anything. Right? That couldn't Sony Cinematic Universe be anything? Couldn't that include 21 Jump Street and whatever? You have to talk about the comics universe. I'm not sure. Again, it's hard for me to comment, Julius, because I've never heard of it, but then ultimately, who cares? It makes no difference. Do they call it the Worlds of DC or the DCU? Or the DCEU? Ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's not going to affect anything. But since I've never heard either of the terms, I can't really say why they would call it one or the other, other than to say who cares. It really won't make any difference, right? All right. ZCM follows up with, sorry, took a jump. Let's see. Here we go. ZCM writes, what's the difference between a caper and a heist? See, I'm the wrong person to ask. I'm not an English language major, but to me, heist is very specifically the plan that involves getting in, stealing something, and getting out. To me, that's a very specific guideline. I think caper could mean that, but I also think when I think of caper, I think it could involve much more. Whereas to me, heist is a little bit more specific. Again, I'm the wrong guy to ask because I'm not an English language major, but that's always kind of how I've seen it. Heist is more specific. It's about getting in, getting something, and getting out. Caper could involve that, but it could involve more things as well. So That's just the way I've always kind of formulated in my head. One of you guys who takes English in university, answer ZCM's question below. ZCM follows up with, would love to see Sony do a Kraven the Last Hunter spin, but with Venom instead. We've been talking about that, right? Like, with them doing a Kraven the Hunter movie, instead, in the comics, Kraven's ultimate hunt is to hunt Spider-Man. Well, we don't have Spider-Man in the Sony verse, right? So what if he were to hunt Venom? We've been talking about that. I think, by the way, there is precedent for that in the comic books as well. We've seen Kraven go after Venom before. So there's precedent for it. It would be amazing on screen. I hope it's something that they do. Raymond Vitara writes, can Bad Robot just drop Star Trek 4 and proceed with the Tarantino movie? If it's Hemsworth's salary that's holding it up, I'd rather keep Pine. Well, I mean, first of all, it's not Bad Robot's call. It's Paramount's call. Paramount will decide what they want and what they don't. What they really want is Star Trek 4. Yes, you could drop Hemsworth, because let's face it, unlike Chris Pine, who has been Kirk, the main character of these movies, for 3 films, the last time we saw Chris Pine was 8 years ago. Was it 8 or 9? 9 years ago. And he was in it for 10 minutes. So I would really like to have Chris Hemsworth in there. But I would agree. If it means you got to drop Hemsworth, you still got to pay another actor, because apparently this role is going to be a big major role. So you still got to hire another actor, but maybe you could drop Hemsworth, save some money there, and then add some of that money to Pine's salary. It's possible. You could work out something like that, but you got to be careful too, because you still want a really good actor if you're going to have this father-son, both roughly of the same age, and you want it to be a name. You want it to be a name. Doesn't have to be Hemsworth, but it could be somebody else. But even then, you got to spend money. So if they could figure out a way to do that, Raymond, I would vote for that as well. Just because I'm not saying Pine's a better actor than Hemsworth or vice versa. It's just that Pine has been the lead character of 3 films. Hemsworth was in 10 minutes of the first film 9 years ago. So if you have to keep one, you keep Pine. I agree with you on that. Let's see. KHK Productions writes, do you think that with such an important decision being made by Iger and Horn without consulting Feige, that it may weigh heavily on Feige's decision to renew his contract with Marvel Disney? Nope, I don't think this is going to have anything to do with it. The reality is, Kevin Feige has worked with over a dozen directors, right? James Gunn is one. Should they have consulted with Kevin Feige? Yes. That's no doubt. They should have. Did they need to? No, they didn't. They're Feige's bosses. They're the ones, they can make those decisions. If I were Kevin Feige, would I be upset that I wasn't consulted? Yeah, I'd be upset. Is it enough to make me go, well, I don't want to work here anymore? No. You only get to that point, it's like, no, you clearly broke the relationship here of how my job is supposed to be. You stepped on my toes with my job. You fired somebody you didn't have the right to fire. Well, no, that's not what happened. So I honestly know. I quite frankly, I don't see this. I mean, I'm sure it doesn't make Kevin Feige happy, but if you're Kevin Feige, you don't walk over something like this. It's not a big enough issue in terms of your job scope. It's not a big enough issue to draw a line in the sand with, for example. It just wouldn't be prudent. It wouldn't be wise. And it's really wasn't his, again, Alan Horn, while I believe he made the wrong decision, Alan Horn did not overstep his boundaries. He is the chairman of Disney Studios. He can make those decisions. It's totally within his purview to make those decisions. He didn't break protocol. Is there other things he could have done that would have been wiser? Yes. But yeah, he didn't break faith with Kevin Feige. He didn't do anything like that. So no, I wouldn't see Kevin Feige walking over this. Not at all. I could be wrong about that. I just don't see it happening. Okay, let's move on to the next question here. And the next question comes to us from Curtis Lopez, who writes, imagine if Blockbuster bought Netflix when they had the chance. They would still be Prime and the rental digital streaming service. Oh, I know. For those of you who don't remember, Blockbuster had the opportunity once many moons ago to actually buy Netflix. And it was in the, I think, just double-digit millions of dollars. It was nothing compared to the worth of Netflix today. And Blockbuster opted against it. at the time. Now, look, at the time, now in hindsight, we can see what Netflix had become. But at the time, it was very uncertain which direction Netflix would go, how it would evolve, how it would grow. It was very uncertain. So it's easy for us today to look back and go, ugh, Blockbuster were idiots. How could they have not bought Netflix? Well, because at the time, it didn't look like necessarily the smartest thing. Fortunately for Netflix, everything went Netflix's way. But let's not judge Blockbuster. But yeah, Blockbuster said, no, we're just going to do our own thing. And then Blockbuster, for a short time before they died. And by the way, there's still a Blockbuster open in America. I think it's in Ohio. There's one Blockbuster store still open in America. And they say they got no plans of shutting down. But anyway. But as a franchise, when Blockbuster was still around, right before they really started to go under, they started to have their own digital streaming service. They're trying to catch up to Netflix. But it was too little, too late. And yeah, I think everything would look really different today had Blockbuster pulled the trigger on that and actually bought Netflix. Technovine writes, watching you, John, while playing Five Nights at Freddy's Ultimate Custom Night at 12 a.m. Anyway, when's the film adaptation of this game coming? They've been talking about Five Nights at Freddy's forever. And the last I heard them talk about it, it was still a certainty. They were saying, yep, this movie's happening, just still developing, still working out the script, but it's greenlit, all that kind of stuff, blah, 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 blah. But it's been a while. So for now, let's just take them at their word that this movie's still happening. It's still going to be coming. It's a great premise for a movie. It could be hilarious and terrifying all at the same time. That game gives me the creeps. I remember it was only about a year or two ago that I first tried. I was laying in bed one night and I'm like, oh, I think I'll try this Five Nights at Freddy's everybody's talking about. So I tried. It's creepy. It's a creepy little game, but also very funny. So it could make a great movie, but we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. Let's see. Oh my goodness, I just found out my expansion code for World of Warcraft Battle of Azeroth has just came in. That's my happy dance. All right, let's see. Next one comes to us from the author who writes, Pride is awesome. Are you even going to do a book signing? I would love to have my copy signed. Well, thanks a lot for the author. Some people don't remember I wrote a book. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I'm very proud of the book. I'm not going to pretend it's one of the great novels out there. No, but I'm very proud of it. And I would love to do another one if I ever had the time. I would love to do another one. But I don't know. Just keep your eyes open, the author, for when I might be in your area. And if you ever run into me, just, yeah, I'd be honored to sign it. I would be honored to sign it. Thanks for asking about that, man. I appreciate that. Let's see. LeBron007 writes, Venom being PG-13 can get away with a lot. Remember Transformers? They had Optimus ripping heads off. As long as there's no blood, Venom can get away with a lot. See, that's the thing a lot of people forget. With PG-13... you can do a lot of violence. Like, I remember that one Die Hard movie that wasn't PG-13, or sorry, that was PG-13 instead of rated R, where you really noticed the difference wasn't in the violence. It was actually in the language. That's where you really felt the difference was the language. But let's face it, you don't need language in a Venom movie, right? You don't need language, you don't need nudity, you don't need sexual situations, you don't need any of that. What you need is violence. And as long as you don't show red dripping blood, you can do a lot of violence. And I remember that Die Hard movie, which was not so good, but I remember thinking, I felt really, temperature-wise, I didn't feel much difference between the action in like the R-rated Die Hard movies and this PG-13 this PG-13 rated Die Hard movie. Where I noticed it most was in all of a sudden the change of gears of language. That's what I noticed. But you're right, there is a lot of stuff you can get away with a PG-13 in just terms of violence. And I don't think a lot of us are looking for a bunch of F-bombs in a Venom movie. Now, by the way, let's be clear here. They have not officially said that Venom is going to be PG-13. There is still a possibility it could be rated R. We'll have to wait and see. So it's not official. All I'm saying is that as a fan, if they come out and announce a PG-13 Venom, it doesn't worry me at all. That doesn't shake me one bit. Would I prefer to hear an R-rated Venom? Yeah, I think I'd prefer that. But if it's not, I don't see that as any reason to be concerned, to be honest with you. But that's just me. All right. Saburo Sensei writes, Saw Christopher Robin yesterday for my wedding anniversary. I loved it. One of those movies to warm your heart. I suppose. Pooh reference. I suppose. My wife loves that movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it too. I thought the first act had some issues. After the first act, I thought it was delightfully charming and wonderful. But yeah, I had some problems with the first act. But anyway, and my wife's absolute favorite in that was Eeyore. After it figures. No, where's the... No point in delaying the inevitable. Like, oh my God, Eeyore steals that movie. Eeyore just absolutely steals that movie, but it is so charming. And just whenever Pooh says, balloons do make me so very happy. It's like, oh, like in movies, like in a world of movies where it's like, oh, do you see him rip that guy's head off? Oh, do you see when he killed us? A stuffed animal saying, balloons do make me so very happy. Oh, loved it. Loved it. It's such a charming little movie. And I'm glad you had a chance to see it, Subaru, and I'm glad you liked it. All right, Mike Stevenson writes, John, thoughts on mini rooms, Vanity Fair, making TV writing rooms part of the gig economy. Buy to sustainable careers. Keep that filth coming, son. Be honest with you, Mike, I'm not quite sure what we're... Let me read it again. Thoughts on mini rooms, Vanity Fair. Making TV writing rooms part of the gig community. Buy to sustainable careers. Keep that filth coming, son. I'm not really clear on what it is you're asking, Mike. It sounds like a great topic, but I'm assuming you're referring to a Vanity Fair article. If so, I have not read that Vanity Fair article. Mike, do me this favor, please. Email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com and put Vanity Fair article in the subject line and send me a link to that, because now you've got me fascinated. Because anything about writers' rooms and things like that, and the behind the scenes stuff of Hollywood and all that kind of stuff, I find all that very fascinating. Please do me that favor and email me whatever link to that gives me a little bit more detail on that, because I would love to read it. So please send that to me. I'd be very appreciative if you did. All right, let's move on here. Nerd Polemist writes, I noticed that you haven't mentioned Pierce Brosnan's performance as James Bond. What do you think of his performance? Oh, I've talked about Pierce Brosnan as Bond many times. I've talked about him as Bond many times. I liked him as James Bond. I found him to be more of a Roger Moore kind of Bond, which is perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. Unfortunately, other than GoldenEye, which was awesome, he had a couple of Bond films that were not so strong. That had nothing to do with him. Look, I remember when they announced him as the new James Bond. And he had a show on when I was a kid called Remington Steele. And that's where everybody first saw Pierce Brosnan. It was Remington Steele was the TV show he was on. And I remember when they announced him as Bond, it was one of those, well, duh, of course he's James Bond. You know what I mean? I liked him as Bond. Yeah. Yeah, not my favorite Bond or anything, but I thought he was a very good Bond. And the all-time best line was in one of the worst movies. And it was a total eye-rolling line. But it's so... I will always... When I think of Pierce Brosnan as James Bond, I always think of this. So, I'm forgetting the name of the actress, which is driving me crazy. That I shouldn't be forgetting her name. But anyway, she's this beautiful, hot, young actress. And she played a nuclear physicist. And her name was Dr. Christmas. Her last name was Christmas. And her last name was Dr. Christmas. So clearly, at the end of the movie ends with James Bond in bed with Dr. Christmas, right? And it's the very last shot of the movie, and the camera comes into the room just as they were finishing having sex. So they had just finished having sex, right? So Bond and Dr. Christmas have just finished having sex. He rolls over, and the line, as one of the worst/best lines ever in movie history, Pierce Brosnan as James Bond rolls over and goes, and I thought Christmas only came once a year. Boom. Worst line ever, best line ever. It's just really stupid. But anyway, so yeah, I liked him as Bond. I did. Dirk Walker writes, Oh, and we have gone overtime, so I'm going to go through a bunch of these really quickly, guys. Dirk Walker writes, next week, Moviepass will announce its one movie a year plan, matinees only, and you have to correctly answer a riddle once you get to the theater. It does kind of seem like it's heading that. What is your favorite color? What is the traveling airspeed of a something swallow, of an unladen swallow? Anyway. A little Mighty Python reference there. I mean, it does... Let me read it again. That was funny. Next week, Moviepass will announce it's one movie a year, matinees only, and you have to correctly answer a riddle once you get to the theater. I love that. That's awesome. Thanks for sending that, Dirk. Celerity9 writes, are they doing the MCU IMAX to push Infinity War over The Force Awakens? No, because it's still like 20 million short. It's still like 20 million short. So, I don't, even if you, because you'd have to split it up. No, they're not, they don't care. Disney does not care. Remember, Disney, The Force Awakens is their movie. They don't care about... Now, if The Force Awakens was some other studio, let's say The Force Awakens was by Paramount, would Disney really go through all this hassle and put together blah, blah, just to nudge Infinity War over another studio's movie? That's far-fetched, but maybe, although it's pretty far-fetched. Considering they're both Disney films, there's no motivation there. Disney's not going to greenlight this just to get over The Force Awakens. Oh, wait a minute, that's our movie too. Oh, so we've got that spot no matter what? Okay, then never mind. Like, so there's really no point in that. So no. Number one, I don't think it even would do it. Because you'd have to get all the money this IMAX festival makes and divide it by 20. Right? This festival's not going to make $400 million. It's going to make $40 million or something like that. And only about 1/20 of that could be then attributed to Infinity War, which would add $3 or $4 million to its total. Not enough. Like, it's still over $20 million short. So no, I don't see that being one of their motivations. I just don't see any motivation there. There's no reason to do it. And it's far too complicated, far too elaborate, far too much work you have to do in it just for a meaningless thing like saying, oh, we were able to nudge this movie over that movie. It really makes no difference. So I just don't see any motivation to do that. Okay, Israel Freeman writes, Marvel property that's a good fit for Antoine. Oh, I think you mean Antoine Fuqua. Oh, almost anything. Almost anything. Antoine Fuqua, like I said, one of the things I love about him is he develops his characters, he does badass action, he tells a really good narrative as he's doing it. When you think about the potential Marvel things, those are traits of a director you could put on any kind of a movie. The only thing I'm not sure Antoine Fuqua can do is great comedy. That's the only thing I'm not sure if he can do. But even in, like, you know, if you look at things like Training Day, there's some good moments of chuckles and laughs, right? Like, he's just got a good overall skill set as a director that I think would be applicable to just about any Marvel movie. So, honestly, I wouldn't care. You could say he's directing X movie, and I'm totally for it. I'm totally for it just because he's a good storyteller and really knows how to, he has those tools in his tool belt to really bring out the best in a movie. He's not the greatest director in the world, but he's a really solid one, and I would be happy with just about any character they put him to. Leo Milmet writes, you see 8th Grade yet? Still haven't seen it. Still not gotten around to seeing it. I love Lady Bird, but 8th Grade is very different, and I'm not quite as good. 8th is more comedic. Disagree with person said they're alike. Well, again, yeah, I got to get in there and take a look at it. I mean, on its surface, it feels very similar, but I can't say that's the case because I haven't gone out to see it yet. I need to make sure I see it. Leo follows up with, in my opinion, 8th Grade is more in line with traditional writing of its genre rather than attempting a pure slice of like Lady Bird, much more direct conflict. See, I like that. See, that is the most appealing thing I've heard other than the trailer. Because I thought the 8th Grade trailer was really quite good. And I like your assessment. Like, I mean, Leo, your assessment could be totally wrong. I don't know. I haven't seen the movie. But I really like you're describing that. 8th Grade is more in line with traditional writing in its genre rather than attempting a pure slice of life like Lady Bird did, much more direct conflict. See, that actually sounds pretty good to me. So I appreciate that. Thank you for your assessment, and I will let you know what I think about it once I get a chance to finally run in there and see it. Adamus95 writes, news today on James Gunn. A pedophile-themed party and pictures are posted online. I don't know the full story, but don't want to jump to conclusions. First of all, they're talking about some story. Once again, pictures that came out from long ago. Number one, it was not a pedophile-themed party. It was a theme party on the TV show To Catch a Predator. That was the theme of the party. There was a party he attended that had To Catch a Predator theme. And I think he dressed like a priest or something like that, right? That was from, I think even before, if I'm not mistaken, might have even been before the tweets. I mean, it was so forever ago. And he dressed in a costume as a priest at a To Catch a Predator party. But because of the current narrative, people are taking it. And by the way, these pictures were not discovered. He put them online himself because they were, hey, I went to a party. It was the theme of To Catch a Predator. This is back when he was doing trauma films, right? It's like, But like my whole thing with that was why people are trying to they're trying to force a narrative on this. It's like, look, are you going to say that anybody that goes out dressed like the Joker is a homicidal murderer or they believe murder is okay? No, that's ridiculous. Just because somebody dresses as something that is a homicidal murderer, like the Joker or something, that does not mean they themselves have the tendencies of a homicidal murderer. But I've also heard them joke about killing people. Telling jokes about killing people does not make you a murderer. George Carlin has a very famous comedy routine called People Who Should Be Killed. Look it up. He does. He has a routine called People Who Should Be Killed. He's making jokes about murdering people. Murder is not good. Murder is not right. Of course it's not right. Murder is not good. Murder is not right. But that does not make George Carlin a murderer. Nor should we suspect James Carlin of being a murderer because he made jokes about murder. Nor should we suspect somebody who dresses as the Joker is a murderer or deep down really wants to be a murderer because they dress like the Joker. Or a demon or a monster or a predator or whatever else. It doesn't matter. So yeah, again, these were pictures taken ages ago at a TV show themed party where he dressed like a priest and people are just adding it to their narrative. So to me, it's a non-story. J. Hart RIC writes, time for McAvoy as Picard. Oh my gosh, that would be funny. I mean, I don't think you're going to see that. But look, just because they had James McAvoy as a young Patrick Stewart in the X-Men universe, that does not mean you now have to go and get James McAvoy to play a young Patrick Stewart in every movie he's in. It would be funny, yes, but you don't necessarily need to do that. Any more so than you need to get the kid who just played Han Solo to go out and play a young Harrison. And then immediately, guys, that'll do it. Listen, for all the rest of you who are watching right now, I have run out of time, but I will get around to getting to the rest of the questions. Actually, let me see how many questions I have left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I've run out of time. Sorry, guys. But I will take all the questions that were sent in that we didn't have a chance to get to, and I will add them to the upcoming companion videos. So these questions you guys sent in will get asked on a video. It'll just be in a companion video over the next couple of days. Keep your eyes open to that because I've already gone like 15 minutes overtime. Today's installment of the Giant